What's up, everyone? Welcome to Simulation. I'm your host, Alan Sakian. Today, we are blessed to have Josh Tetrick on the show.
What's up, man?
Thank you so much for coming on.
Good to be here.
It's a pleasure. I love your mind. I love where you came from. I love what you're building into the world. Thank you, Andrew, for helping us get you here. And
have you ever been to Alabama? That's where I'm from.
I haven't, man.
Okay, we got to take you there. You
we
need a little Birmingham experience.
Yeah.
Maybe Mobile.
Yeah.
Get you into like the deep part of the South.
I think every human needs to do a stop in the South. I think every human needs to do a stop in Africa, a stop in Asia. Just this whole consciousness expansion across the world.
Were you from South Dakota?
South Dakota.
See, I haven't done a stop in South Dakota, so we also need to do some stops in South Dakota too. But I agree, you can't. There's a lot of great stuff going in Silicon Valley, but Silicon Valley is not the world. It's not culturally the world. Yeah. It's not emotionally the world.
Yeah.
You really you have to put your mind, your feet in the shoes of other people.
Correct.
To really understand what's going on. You're not going to build things that are relevant.
Yep. And this has led Josh to do things like, work with the UN and then work with with Liberia as well. So you've done some work across the world, which has been very important. And that kind of led you into this whole sustainability and food and now Just company. You guys have been up for 6.5 years.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's a long time to be around and tinkering with how to feed the world in a sustainable and healthy, safe way. Yeah, so this 6.5 years, that's amazing. And now your products are in stores across the US.
Products are in stores across the US. We're in about 135,000 points of distribution. So you can find our mayo in Beckley, West Virginia. You can find our cookies at Texas A&M. You can find our dressings at Whole Foods down the way. You can find Just Power Gari on the streets of Monrovia, Liberia, being sold by an amazing woman named Ma Ruth on Randall Street. I'm sure you've been on Randall Street in Monrovia before. We're, the common denominator between all the things we do is food sucks right now. We want to make it better. The reason why it's not that good is because we use tools like processed sugar, conventional animal protein, lots of soy and corn. Those tools are not sufficient to build a food system where people can eat well. They're not sufficient to make this idea of eating well a basic right, which is the fundamental principle of our company. We need new tools. There are a lot of tools in the plant kingdom, some in the animal kingdom. We want to find them, use them, make stuff, go fast. That more than anything is the thing that drives us.
I love that mission point. It's a human right to eat healthy, eat well. That's really important.
And think about it too, think about even the United States, all the things we disagree about. So we disagree whether we should have AR-15s or not. There's some disagreement in the United States. There's some disagreement whether healthcare should be a single payer system or not. There's disagreement whether we should privatize Social Security. There's disagreement about whether we should have welfare or not. There's disagreement on prison reform. There's disagreement on all sorts of different things. A Trump voter, a Bernie Sanders voter, a non-voter, black, white, Asian, doesn't matter. Everyone agrees with the basic idea that it should be easy for human beings to eat well. Yeah. How could you disagree with that, right? And eating well, unpacking it, just means at the simplest level, food that tastes really good is also the same kind of food that's a little bit better for us, that is not screwing up the planet, and that's available to everyone. That's all it means.
Yep.
There's a lot of complexity that goes into this stuff, but at the heart, everyone should be able to eat well. And I think why I've gotten really excited about this idea is it's not a Silicon Valley thing. It works just as nicely with the Trump voter as a non-Trump voter. And I think there's power in ideas like that. And there's something there's something universal about the experience of food. Food is not artificial intelligence. It's not code on a smartphone. We've been doing this food thing for thousands of years. We'll do it for thousands more. It strikes a chord with people.
It is not rocket science, but it is very difficult science to put together what you have done and to be able to grow food sustainably from the cell of a stem cell from a chicken, turn that into a whole chicken breast, to do things like put together the ingredient list here. So mayo normally comes with egg and normally comes with other dairy as well.
Every once and again, you'll have a little dairy, but primarily it's a chicken egg. There are about 1.1 trillion chicken eggs that are laid every single year around the world. It's the cheapest, most abundant source of animal protein. Vast majority of the chicken eggs come from places that most people wouldn't want to see. Too much land, too much water. And what we did here is to say, I bet we can make a better mayo, which is America's most popular condiment. We can make a better mayo. It can be healthier, has about a third of the fat, can use less land, less water, can even be tastier if we use different ingredients. And we used a yellow split pea from Canada and some other things in there to make mayo that isn't just for the Whole Foods crowd, although I want them to buy it, but is in every single solitary Walmart around the country.
Right now?
Right in this moment. You can go to anyone who's listening, who's watching this, you can go to any Walmart anywhere around the country. You can go past the Tyson chicken nuggets, around the cereal, next to the Snickers, and around the 6 packs of Coca-Cola and beer. Go to the condiment aisle and you'll see our mayo there with the biggest brands in the world.
Amazing. And that takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of effort to refine this to a really good taste and also to get it into all of those different distribution outlets.
Yeah.
Now, what is expeller pressed canola oil? That's the first ingredient on here.
It's just canola. So you can make mayo or dressings with different kinds of oil. You can make it with canola oil. You can make it with soybean oil. You can make it with safflower oil, sunflower oil, all kinds of oils. Ours works better with a type of non-GMO expeller pressed canola oil that we source from Canada and from areas in Asia, and it just gives a certain texture, not an aftertaste that is not that works in some of the applications.
I loved it when I tried it at World's Fair. It was really good. I really enjoyed it. And then you have water and then modified food starches, distilled vinegar, sugar. So the ingredient list is fairly short, about 10 ingredients, everything or have a general idea of.
And what we love about, we're not a mayo company, but we're super proud of this product, that the vast majority of people that are going into Walmarts and buying this have no idea what veganism is. They're not vegetarian. They're bringing that home to their family and they're making chicken salad or egg salad with it. They're throwing it on a hamburger.
Yeah.
And we really do think that the dogma that often exists of, you need to be vegan or vegetarian or, not, it's a false choice. And, I like to think of myself as an environmentalist, yet I probably racked up over 100,000 miles over the last 2 months.
Of
traveling, I'm traveling, right?
Yeah, and that's a huge.
Yeah, I just mean to say that, we're the human animal is an imperfect animal, and we need to figure out ways to support each other so we can do better. And this is a tiny little step with something that a lot of people eat that hopefully can be again just a tiny little step towards helping us become better and also helping people to eat a little bit better.
Yep. And so that was the first product line.
That was the first one.
And then what came second? Because we have some cookies, we have some powder gari here, we have a little breakfast sandwich as well.
You got a breakfast sandwich.
Yeah. So tell us about that.
Well, so this you got to keep in mind. This is. I had no idea what the hell I was doing when I started the company. So I just knew food system screwed up. I want to use my life for something meaningful.
Yep.
Started to think about why the food system is so screwed up, and then got started. I actually thought initially we were going to be an ingredient company. We weren't going to make products like Power Gar in your hand and mayo and Just Scramble and these cookies. And one day I got a call from the head of grocery from Whole Foods at the time, who said, "We've been reading articles about you guys. You seem to be doing some interesting things. Do you have any products we could sample?" I sent him a few things, including mayo. We had cookies and cookie dough and other things.
Yep.
And he said, "I'm liking that mayo. Can you send me more samples?" Sent him more samples. And then shortly thereafter, he said, "You know what? Let's do a national launch."
National launch.
Boom.
Launch. That's like 5,000 stores? Or?
Whole Foods has many fewer than that. They have about 400. Yeah, Walmart has about 4,000+. Whole Foods has about 450 or so.
Okay.
And then boom, we were in all those different stores.
That's amazing.
People could access
Wow.
it. But yeah, since then, we like to go. Our kind of theory of the case here is Food system, if you just kind of step back, food system, big, about $4.8 trillion. Most of the categories that make up food include baked goods, north of $300 billion, dairy, north of $300 billion, meat, $1.1 trillion, eggs, north of $200 billion. There are big categories that are growing.
What about fruit and vegetable?
Those are big too.
Yeah. Okay.
Those are, we don't mess with them because I want people to eat more fruits and vegetables. Yeah, but
Yeah.
those are big.
Yep.
So the way we think is, let's look at these big categories. Let's ask ourselves what might be inherently wrong with those big categories. And if you just look at it, many of them use too much land, too much water. Many of them accelerate obesity. Many of them accelerate diabetes. Many of them aren't working because of the existing tools used to make them are the same old things: processed sugar, conventional animal protein, soy, and corn. But if we can use a different set of tools, maybe tools from the plant kingdom as an example,
Yep.
to build them from scratch, well, maybe they could be healthier, more sustainable, tastier, more accessible.
Yes.
So the way we think about it is new tools, and let's go after these big categories. And as you said, we got mayo here. We found a bean a little bit ago that we threw in a pan, and it turns out it scrambles like a chicken egg.
So that's called the mung bean?
It's called the mung bean. So the mung bean's been in the world's food system for 4,400 years. We didn't invent the mung bean. And it turns out that when you put it in a pan, it scrambles. You can make breakfast sandwiches out of it. We launched this product in the Bay Area. It's called Just Scramble, and it's also in Hong Kong. And we're going to be launching all across the United States and all across the world soon. And we want, like all of our products, we want the vast majority of people to eat it, not because they care about the environment, not because they care about hens in cages, but because they want food that tastes really good. And then a nice benefit to that is it makes them feel good about doing something a little bit better.
Yep.
But taste must be the headline, or else we'll end up building a company for people that really care, which is building a really small company.
This looks just like egg, you know?
Yeah, this was a hard one.
It's breaking up just like egg.
Yeah.
And it tastes really good.
This was one of our hardest, probably our hardest to do. I mean, imagine like we're sitting here. Imagine we're sitting here 6 years or so ago when we started the company, and we're like, all right, let's find something, some plant that scrambles like an egg.
Correct. It's so difficult.
Like, where the fuck do you start? I mean, just imagine, like literally, we're like, the egg is the cheapest, most abundant source of animal protein. It uses a lot of land, a lot of water.
Yep.
Maybe the animal welfare conditions aren't the best for those hens. Could there be a plant that, if we found it, could scramble, could have that taste and texture? Where do you start? You know, we started just ordering lots of things randomly, and then we eventually developed a process where we look at the plant kingdom as a massive data set. There are over 357,000 species of plants all over the world. We developed a methodology where we source them, we screen them for certain properties, we organize the data, and if we do our job well enough, we can find certain things that work like that.
Let's walk us through that process, because that is really fascinating. So how do you pick all these different, what are some of the first things that come to mind as how much protein they have, or how sustainable they are to grow, or how well they would turn into the thing that you want them to turn into?
Right. So we start with like focusing on what we want at the highest level. So again, there's this awareness. The tools used to make a lot of the products don't work. So take the egg as an example. Most eggs come from not so good places, not all of them, but most. Too much land, too much water. And then you look at an egg, imagine cracking an egg, throw it in a pan, and then watch what happens when it's in the pan. It starts to gel. It has a certain viscosity, how thick or thin it is. Once it's scrambled up, you eat it, it has a certain texture, has a certain flavor release to it. Those things that I just mentioned are functionalities. So underlying the food that we eat is a functional set. And for a scrambled egg, the functions that make that include gelation, flavor release, texture, color, right? Viscosity. And for us, the first question is, can we find a plant that does those functions? Now, we don't need to find a plant that makes a great chicken nugget, or find a plant that makes great ice cream. Maybe eventually we do. We were just focusing on the egg. So we want to find a plant that does those things and nothing but those things. Mm-hmm. So initially it was randomly order a bunch of shit and try it. We ordered lots of things. Sometimes we'd throw things in a pan and it would just disappear. Sometimes we'd throw things in a pan and it would taste like crap. Sometimes we'd throw things in a pan, it would scramble up nicely, but then fall apart in a very odd way in your mouth, right? Mm-hmm. So we started to learn, though, what works and what doesn't. And it turns out that when you sort of peel the onion literally back on a plant, that you have molecular characteristics, like what is the molecular weight of the protein, what is the secondary structure of the protein, and then you have functional characteristics like does it gel? And it turns out, fascinatingly so, that there's a relationship between what you see on the molecular and what is true on the functional.
Cool.
And the more that we tested, the more that we identified these relationships. And the more that we test, the more we get smart about where to look. So as opposed to looking everywhere, we're like, okay, how about we look for beans that look like this, that act like that? Yeah. Okay, now let's just test those. Yep. And it helped to narrow down the search space so that, now when we want to find something, it's still hard, but it's a lot easier than it was previously. But we source plants from over 51 countries around the world. If you're ever able to make it to headquarters, we have a plant library downstairs run by my friend Udi, who works with farmers all across the world to bring those plants in. And then we have an automation lab where we can screen some of these molecular characteristics a lot faster than just human beings going boop, boop, boop. Yep. And then a team of product developers and food scientists who figure out, does this damn thing brown? Does it gel? Does it make really good whatever we're trying to make?
Yep. And you've gotten so much better at that over the years with this whole the operations of that process. Because you've invested so much time into figuring out exactly where to start looking, how it works, like you said at the molecular level, how does it gel? That is a crucial step as you continue expanding your line. Really, so how many people now is it total at?
We have 120 people.
Wow.
About 55 or so on the R&D side. And we have all sorts of different disciplines. We have computational biologists, we have food scientists, we have Michelin star chefs, we have PhD food scientists, we have plant biochemists, we have folks that are experts in different areas of process engineering, including bioreactors, spray dryers.
Yep. Because that's where we'll eventually get. We'll eventually get to brewing this in massive bioreactors near our homes, and just being able to go and pick up a little bit of mung bean egg scramble. Yeah.
Well, I think there are. Our approach is that what matters. One can use a lot of, as tends to be the case in Silicon Valley, like machine learning is not an appropriate solution to every problem, nor is automation, right? So our philosophy on this is we're fairly technology agnostic. I just want to solve the problem. And it's always good to be like, what is the problem again? Okay, the toolkit for the current food system sucks. Okay, why does it suck? Because it's not sustainable, because it's unhealthy. Okay, got it. What are used? Okay, soy, corn, processed sugar, conventional animal protein. Okay, got it. Can we build a better toolkit? Okay, got it. Where can we get that from? Okay, plants. Okay, that's good. Animals, that's good. How do we do that without causing damage? Okay, just like this. Okay, let's go. We just kind of use logical deduction to get back to that. And the plant kingdom is a great source of tools. The animal kingdom is a great source of tools, so as long as you don't confine or slaughter animals. Yep. So we can use cells to make meat. We can use plants to scramble an egg. There are different processes associated with them, but we just want to get after it and do it fast.
Yep. And so 135,000 different distribution outlets right now for
points. Yeah, so you can Walmart, Safeway, Kroger, 3,300 public schools.
Wow, you're in public schools as well.
Public schools, great. Yeah, 572 universities. We're in big football stadiums. We're at the NFL's corporate cafe, NBA's corporate cafe.
Awesome. You're taking over.
We're Mexico City with Walmart. So we've been lucky to get out there fast.
And so then the vision is you've talked about it a couple times, and are we thinking about having this closer to us in terms of being able to have these little, is buying scramble going to be the way that I source my egg protein in the future, or will it be something more like a being able to make it myself at home? Where do you kind of see that?
I think when you look at, food demand's growing by 70% between now and 2050. A lot of these big categories, meat, eggs, dairy, baked goods, are driving a lot of the growth. The question is, how do you rewire these different categories to make them a lot better so more people can eat well?
Yeah.
So that becomes a basic right. You find the tools, we make products. I think we want to get it on more and more retail shelves. 135,000 points of distribution sounds good. It's very small compared to where we should be. The United States is only 300 million people, and we have 7.1 billion people on the planet right now. So we're failing in that extent. We have a lot more people that we want to reach. And people are not only buying products in a Walmart, but Ma Ruth, the woman that I mentioned on Randall Street in Monrovia, Liberia, is selling Just Power Gari from a little table she has set up. She's got some mangoes on the table, and she's got some Just Power Gari. That's a retail location.
Yeah.
And there are hundreds of millions, literally, of retail locations like that around the world, across Mumbai, across sub-Saharan Africa, across the Middle East, across South America.
Yep.
We want to be in those places also. You have the food service, restaurants, public schools, universities all across the world. And the nearer term objective, like in the last decade, is to make more of these categories better and put it in those places.
Yep.
I think the idea of decentralizing, how one prepares their food, I think that's really exciting. I think for the next 10 years, though, we're really focusing on how do we accelerate the process of getting more of these categories in a better way and all that. But an important part of it is there's some big food companies out there, some of the biggest in the world, who also want to do good and make money. And if we can give some of our tools to them to accelerate their process along this, we'll do it.
Yeah. That becomes a harmonious relationship with the already giants that exist and the clients that they already have around the world.
No question.
So within the what was the first ingredient in the scramble was mung bean?
Yeah, mung bean. Well, it's actually water and then mung bean.
Water, then mung bean, and then this similar egg is applied to the cookie as well.
So it's a different plant. It's sorghum, which is a grain. So sorghum is a grain that sometimes is used as animal feed even, and so sorghum. So if we tried to take the plant that's in the cookie and scramble it, it wouldn't work. What sorghum does is it browns, it binds, provides a little bit of aeration, not a whole lot of aeration, but browning and binding and a little flavor release is the key, or the key functionalities that underlie sorghum. So you see here, you have a yellow split pea, an emulsifier, sorghum, a grain that provides those functionalities, mung bean, different functionalities.
Yep.
So you're beginning to see sort of the beginnings, and again, we're in the very, very early days of building this toolkit that we want to build, but the very early days of building a toolkit that I think makes a lot more sense for where the world needs to go.
One more time on the cookies was the
sorghum.
Sorghum. That's
Sorghum.
HUM. Where's that sourced from? What is it?
Midwest.
Midwest.
You can find it in Africa, elsewhere, Australia, but we source ours in the Midwest.
What does it look like? What is it?
It's a grain. It's like a brown grain.
Grown up from the ground?
Yep.
Okay, sorghum. Cool. And, okay.
Big sorghum stalks.
Big sorghum stalks. Kind of like wheat stalks a little
bit?
Yeah.
Somewhat. Yeah. Cooler looking.
You have a very... I love the way that you speak about it in such a visionary way. It's almost like you've been at it for 6.5 years, but before that you weren't, we were just bonding about how we were both eating Little Caesars, pizzas and breadsticks and all these cheap foods when we were younger, because that was what was cheap and accessible to us and all that stuff. Now you got scramble, mayos, all the stuff that's all the way into schools as well. So you're already getting them while they're young and getting them interested in what this is like. Kimball Musk has those learning gardens as well. That's also really important. Stuff like that. So You have a very like globalization perspective. You want less, you want more sustainability, less emissions. You want safer food, cleaner food, all this kind of stuff. This is very visionary.
Tastier food.
Tastier food as well. Yeah, I really like the taste of that mung bean scramble. Cookie was great too. Sorghum, mayo was fantastic. I've yet to try the gari. Really excited to do so. So again, it's just so visionary. I love it, and I think other people can to figure out go and try the Just Food. It's
Can I have a bite of that breakfast sandwich?
Get over here, Ronnie.
Do you like egg sandwiches, Ronnie?
I like eggs, and
Why do you like eggs? What is it about the egg?
Delicious. They're delicious.
Have you ever thought about the underlying functionalities of an egg when you're eating it? Have you ever thought about like the color, the flavor release, gelation, all that
I
stuff?
love the yolk,
Yep.
over easy. Dip the
That's a no.
the yolk on the hash browns, and we dip the toast in the yolk.
See, this is how the way he's explaining an egg.
Yeah.
Is how I previously looked at an egg.
Yeah.
He's talking about how it looks, right? Like but I had to quickly realize, like, wait a second, okay, there's like a different lens here. Like, how do you X-ray it a little bit?
Ron, what do you think about the mung bean?
It's delicious.
I'm glad you like it. Could you eat that every day instead of an egg?
I could.
Good.
So it has about the same amount of protein.
I want to as well.
Yeah.
A little bit more fiber. But we do think, I think.
Can I bring us back to that X-ray? Because I know you were going there, and I thought that was really important.
Of course.
Just we talk about this a lot on the show. Is the way that you view the world, the lens with which you see the world, is really important. So if you're looking at an egg and you're thinking about just the way that I get to dip some bread into the yolk and really enjoy the way it fries and all that kind of stuff. We also forget about the actual process of sourcing, right? When you go and just buy the meat instead of actually go and pet a cow. When you actually go and pet a cow, life changes a lot because you realize that is the being that's being slaughtered when you go to the slaughterhouse. Just to understand the whole supply chain of how something actually gets to you and all that stuff is really important.
I think in so many ways in this world, it's not just related to food, but suffering, cruelty, those types of things really thrive in abstraction. And when you can unpack it, when you can really get very concrete about it. Like even I'll give you an example. 2.1 billion people live in a state of micronutrient deficiency.
Meaning what nutrients are they?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm glad you asked that because that's such an abstract statement, right? And the suffering thrives because it's such an abstract statement. And when you unpack it, like literally what does it mean? It literally means that there's a young girl named Abigail who's in the 3rd grade in Monrovia, Liberia, who wants to do a lot of exciting things with her life, who formerly was ripped out of a brothel where she was held there, put into school to live out her potential, and she's sitting in the 2nd row today, and she has rice in her belly, which means she's not starving, which is really good, and she's learning, and that's really good. But at that critical moment, when she's, as a young person, her brain doesn't have the nutrients to allow it to develop. And the micronutrient deficiency concretely means that she is not receiving enough nutrients to allow her brain to develop, to allow her reasoning, her prefrontal cortex, the systems in her brain to develop as, of course, she should have them develop.
And what do we need for them to develop? What are the nutrients?
Nutrients. You need iodine. You need iron. You need a rich diet of micronutrients. It's not that complicated, right? Cruelty thrives in the abstraction of eating an egg or eating mayo, right? One is not thinking when they're eating mayo about the negative environmental consequences of how that product is typically made.
Correct. Yeah.
Of course they're not.
Yeah.
Nor should we in a way. I mean, you should have a system that exists in this world that makes it easy for us to live out who we are, as opposed to a system like the food system that is almost enabling us to be separate from who we are.
Yeah.
The food system is literally set up right now in a way where you're actively doing things that violate your deepest values without even fucking knowing it.
Yes.
And that's crazy. Like, to me, that is more fundamentally a system problem than it is a people problem. We all have responsibility for it. I'm not trying to like cop that out, but my perspective in doing this with my team back at 2000 Folsom is, let's change the system and let's do it quick.
Yep.
Let's try to make this damn thing easy. And we gotta use some X-ray vision on all this stuff to try to get smart about how to do it better.
You had a whole layer of abstraction. That's a major problem in the food systems. And the more and more that the layers of abstraction go, especially from shareholders to the people that are consuming, from the farm to the person that's consuming, usually the more issues that we'll have in the supply chain until it gets there. So if the farm to table is closer, if the shareholders align their values more with sustainability, I think that will be a healthier world. You mentioned micronutrient deficiency. This is a big deal because when someone's brain is forming into the world, in order for them to be able to have a developed cognition down the line, especially when by the time they're 12 and 18 and 25 and they're trying to do something into the world, if we allow that to happen to millions of people in the world, that creates a massive problem for us, and that should be something that we immediately try and address.
Think about all that innovation. Think about, even if we just thought it, think about this problem as if all we are is selfish for a second. You got 2.1 billion people out there who cannot realize their full potential, whose brain literally will not be working properly. 2.1 billion people, many of whom could be inventing the things that make our lives better. 2.1 billion people who could be helping our economies improve. 2.1 billion people that could be peacemakers of the future. And you know, that is patently unfair.
This is like 1 in every 3 almost people. That's a lot of people.
And I think, you know, one thing that,
wow,
I think it's important for folks that are listening to us right now, that are watching us, that the food system, when we talk about it in San Francisco, when we talk about the food system in New York City, people's brains just stay in the United States. They think about farming in the U.S. They think about, you know, Whole Foods in the U.S. This is where our brains naturally go. But, you know, the food system is most painful to the 3 billion people who are living under $8 a day right now. Not to me and you. The food system is certainly painful to us. And that innovations that are happening in Silicon Valley, neglecting the billions of people that live under $8, $7, $4, $1 a day, is unjust. I think it's stupid also.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of exciting business models to reach down and allow people to do what they want in their lives, to empower themselves. And we get really excited about that.
Yeah, you studied globalization a lot, and I mean, you have a very good, solid understanding of kind of what's going on in Silicon Valley and how it was I think you'll agree with me on this, but life being a roll of the dice in terms of where you're born into the world. And so because of that, it almost makes it, if you do treat the world as your brothers and sisters, as this rest of the planet, then at every moment of life thinking about what's going on in other parts of the world, it almost becomes our obligation, being born into a place that makes it easier for us to impact those places, to help them receive the nutrients that they need for their brains to grow, for us to help them with disease and help them with poverty and all these other things. It almost becomes an obligation for us to prioritize that and to do that, because we would also want that if we were in their shoes, seeing other places in the world thrive so well.
Especially, you know, people think a false choice exists that to reach out and have an impact like that, it needs to be a nonprofit that you're donating to, you know, or a United Nations agency that you're working with. But the reality is there are a lot of entrepreneurs out there that could start companies that are having an impact. And not just for folks under the poverty line outside the U.S., Many folks that I was raised with in Alabama live under the poverty line. Many are on food stamps today. Many people in rural West Virginia and Western Kentucky, Eastern Kentucky. They're really exciting food businesses that one can build that doesn't just focus on serving people that make over $150,000 at their local Whole Foods, you know?
Yeah.
And that's exciting. It forces the spring, I think, of creativity. You know, it's also the fair thing to do.
Yep. Let's walk you down a couple of our simulation-esque questions. As we talk about globalization, as we talk about things like a couple people, 8 people having concentrated as much wealth as the bottom 4 billion people.
Yeah.
Talk to us about kind of what your thoughts are about wealth inequality. What do we do about it?
Well, I think one thing that we can do about it is thinking about the vast majority of folks that do live under $8 a day, that do live in societies in the U.S. where you're not living under $8 a day, but there's still massive inequality. And growing up, our median family income was like in the mid 20,000s. And I think the most important thing I think to do is to give people access to tools.
Like what? Which tools?
Tools, everything from food that they otherwise couldn't have access to the ability to have access to technologies that enable you to empower yourself, to access to teachers that allow you to learn better, to access to communities that can help nurture and mentor you. These are all tools that I think shape and never guarantee, but nonetheless they do increase the probability that you can realize your full potential. Tools that when you're in a classroom, you're not just eating rice that's devoid of any micronutrients, right? And I think tools are across the spectrum. You have tools of technology, you have tools of food, you have tools of community.
Yep.
And I think there's a toolkit that simply increases the probability that one can realize their full potential.
Let's talk about that then. What would you prescribe as the toolkit for maybe a parent to deliver their child as they are growing up? What would be your ideal toolkit for the kids born around the world?
Well, I mean, it'd probably be, so let's go back to that girl Abigail in the 3rd grade, Monrovia, Liberia. So she'd have a really good teachers. She'd have teachers that are smart, that show up on time, that push her. She'd have food that allows her brain to fully develop. She would have access to technologies, so she could read, so she could learn, so she could search, so she could code in the way that she wants to. She would have access, as she has ideas, to capital, whether that's in the form of microloans or in the form of, incubators or even venture capital. She would have a government that allows her to do things freely, speak freely, vote freely, be freely, as opposed to suffocating her mind and her body with bullshit. That's probably where I'd start.
That's great.
And I think you need, I think it's a combination of companies trying to do the right thing and societies realizing that they shouldn't always listen to leaders that throw a lot of bullshit at them. They should listen to pragmatic, thoughtful, rational leaders who believe in evidence-based thinking, in reason, and believe in the human spirit, that don't talk in ways that are alienating, who can go to McDowell County, West Virginia and meet a Trump voter and realize that there's nothing intrinsically wrong at all with that person.
Correct.
What the problem is the system that person is living in, full of fake news, full of mistrust, and full of often, people who come off as being elite who can't understand the world that she's living in.
Yeah, correct.
That sucks. We fix it.
We're on our way.
We're on our way.
All these beautiful minds, you in food, and we have a lot of great people working in news, a lot of great people working in education. I'm really happy you painted out that toolkit. I'm glad that you bring tools as a major touch point in this point.
That's it, because I think the part of my interest in the world, if my house gets hit by a tornado or something, there are tools to rebuild a house. There are tools to make yourself your lunch or your dinner. There are tools to fix your car. And to me, there's an empowering thing to these. When I think of the word tool, like implicit in it is not just we're giving you it for free. There's a little bit of work behind it, you know? You got to still do something with the tool. The tool isn't the product.
Correct.
You know, just because, you know, I'm in a classroom and I have a really good teacher and that's a tool that I didn't have before, I better take advantage of that really good teacher. Just because I have access to technologies doesn't mean that I'm going to use them, but it does mean that it's giving me an opportunity. Just because I have access to better food doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to choose better food. Maybe I still choose that Little Caesars pizza that I ate back in the day. But at least you're giving someone the opportunity to be able to use it.
And I think the education to use the tool,
And to me, that's where, like, getting back to eating well, that education, eating well, these should be basic rights.
Yep.
You know, and again, you don't always have to exercise the basic right, but if you want to, you sure can.
Yep. What's one thing that you believe to be true that nobody else believes to be true?
I believe that I'll give you two things. I think one is in a time period that is much, much shorter than people realize, that we can wake up and this food system problem can be licked. I think people look at the food system and it rightfully so comes off as incredibly daunting. It's complex, it's frustrating, you got politics and culture. I mean, it's a fucking mess. All true. But again, if you cut through all that bullshit and you're just like, oh, what's going on here? The tools are fucked up to make our food. We need better tools. Let's find those fucking tools. Let's make better categories. Let's empower other big companies to be able to do it, and let's go fast, and let's do it. And let's make sure poor people are eating along the way. And in a time, I think, that's much shorter than people realize. Not in a way that is filled with hyperbole, not in a way that is overly optimistic. In a way that's just looking at the physics and breaking it down, I think it can be licked a lot faster than people think. Probably the second thing is, I think, the vast majority of people in the world look at people who are living under, $3-4 a day and naturally assume, I will give my money away to them. I will support Save the Children. I will support the United Nations. I will pray for them. All good things, by the way. But I think the way you help the poorest among us is to say, let me start a company to give them better tools. Mm-hmm. And there is a lot of money to be made, and there is a lot of good, I think more good, to be done through that approach.
Definitely.
And it requires, I think, kind of just a shift away from you're a victim to if you only had, that hand up, you could do everything that you want in your life. And that ends up, helping me and the company too. I think there's a lot of power and energy in that idea.
Yeah. In always and forever, building companies that can solve problems in the world, for me, is way more impactful than purchasing a watch or a boat or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I hope that really gets to people over time as we keep talking about this thing, and this is so applicable to wealth inequality as well. Mm-hmm. So how about, do you think we're alone in the cosmos?
Definitely not. I think there's a very, very high probability, somewhere above 99%, that we're not alone, and that's simply by, if you look at the size of the universe, it's, this little planet is a tiny speck of sand on all the world's beaches, and that's underestimating how big the universe is relative to us. Mm-hmm. The idea that the set of tools that would be available on our planet is not on another planet, or even another species requires an entirely different kind of set of elements in a life support system. You really got to stretch to believe that. I think you've really got to be arrogant and self-possessed and human obsessed to think that we're the only ones around here.
And then do you think we're in a computer simulation?
Unlikely. I hope we're not. I think it's unlikely. But it's difficult to it's just difficult to analyze that rationally. Yeah. But I think more likely than not, this is real life, and and we gotta take advantage of the few seconds that we have in this real life.
Now, what would you say is the most beautiful thing in the world?
I think the most beautiful thing in the world. That's a really good question. I think the most beautiful thing in the world is the peaceful act of simply being who we are. And I think that applies equally to human beings who I think at our core want to be compassionate, want to care about each other, want a good life for their family, want to eat well, as it does to a mountain gorilla in Uganda who simply wants to be with, his troop and exist in that way, to a clownfish and a sea anemone. We don't need to create these false constructions of who we are. And I think there's beauty in just the simplicity of being who we are. And we have systems, whether it's in a food system, an energy system, a political system, a transportation system, that makes it really challenging for us, for a clownfish and a sea anemone, for a lion on a savanna, to a dog, to a mountain gorilla, simply to be who we are.
Yeah.
And I think the most beautiful thing is just being who we are. And I think the systems that we build in this world should be supportive of that.
So we got to add more supportive systems to help us be who we are and strip out the ones that are not helping us be who we are.
That's it.
And have a global conversation about what those are.
Listen, the Pacific garbage patch and the agricultural runoff in oceans that destroys ocean systems.
Political polarization, cognitive bias.
All of this, to me, moves us further and further away from a natural state of being. You talk to young kids. You have to wire in racism to a young child. You have to wire in
It's true.
a lack of compassion for animals. You need to wire in a lack of care or wire in fear.
Yeah.
Intrinsically, most people want to do the right thing. Intrinsically, a wolf wants to roam freely without being shot, by a sniper. And I think figuring out a way to just, the earth and its systems are designed so beautifully. Let's not fuck it up.
Do you think there is a meaning or a purpose to life?
If there's any meaning and purpose, I think it's trying to fight every day to retain that. And that the technologies that are popping up all around us, I think don't need to, it's not about creating an alternate reality that is different than who we are. Let's figure out a way to get back to that. And I think if there is any meaning and purpose, I think it's trying to figure out as fast as we can to be who we are, to act in accordance with basic values that we all share. And that's what I want us to always fight for.
Yep. I love it when people sit in that chair and they pass along some very strong wisdom, and that's why we have you on. We have you on because you are driven, you're making tremendous impact in the food and health and nutrition of other people, everything from micronutrient deficiency across the world to 2.1 billion people, all the way to the woman that's selling Power Gari.
Mama Ruth on Randall. She's slinging the Power Gari. And mangoes too, don't forget about the mangoes too. She's selling the shit out of those mangoes.
135,000 places that you can get Just. So Walmart, Whole Foods, Kroger, stop by the stores, go give it a go, give it a shot. Justforall.com as well. What is our approximation on the chicken breast timeline?
We're going to be, so we're pushing, our goal before the end of the year is to get out the first meat product that didn't require the confinement or the killing of an animal. Today, the idea of eating animals or eating meat necessarily means that an animal was there and then not because we confined and killed the animal.
Yep.
I think in the future we'll be able to eat all the meat we want without killing and confining, and our goal is for the end of the year to do that first.
To have a breast in the store by the end of the year, you hope?
Either chicken, beef, pork, some one of those products. It could be in the form of chicken nugget or sausage or ground.
Cool.
We're still
by the end of the year, hopefully.
By the end of the year,
and
we're still heads
amazing.
down.
You already have all the distribution, which is really crucial. Now you can add additional products in and hope that they go well.
Definitely makes it a little bit easier. Now we got
makes it a lot easier.
We got a crew back there at 2000 Folsom that busts their ass every day. Who they come into work every day, sure, but they've really built an amazing mission, and it's cool to do this every day with them.
120 amazing people that work with you alongside you to actually make this dream come true. We just talked to Josh Kaufman about this. He and I were just chatting about it, but even though you represent the company as the CEO and the founder, it's really the people that are doing everything from the biology all the way to the research that's required, as well as the people that even clean the office afterward. It's everybody like that is the reason why.
But before I left here, where I was kind of sit in the middle now, and we had operations is to my left. We're dealing with procurement. We're ensuring that orders get there on time and in full. Zach is dealing with transportation. You got Caroline. I see all the purchase orders, emails coming out. She's making sure that the POs are delivered on time.
Yep.
You got Robin running around with headphones in, cleaning up stuff to make sure everything's organized. You got Arthur, head of workplace. It's helping to manage the entire operations. We got all sorts of construction projects that are happening. You got my finance team. Rez, my CO, VP, Beverly, my VP of finance. You're making sure that we have systems and processes, and our gross margin is expanding. You got sitting behind me, you got product management, Madhu, who makes sure that I don't just come home after talking to really smart people and say, I want to launch this, this, and this, and this. She keeps us organized and makes sure that we have a process for doing it in the right way. Further behind me, you got the entire R&D team, 50 plus. Mung and my computational biology team, Viv, who leads at discovery and plant biochemistry. You got Ching Yao in automation, who's making sure the robots are doing what they need. And then you got product development over there that's taking these tools, led by Chris Jones, and one of the early people that made this place what it continues to be. Then you got the design mezzanine, where you got Jordan Viola, who designs all this stuff, Eric, who drives marketing, Sherry, who's taking pictures, putting it on social media. You got Mike and Vlad in analytical. You got Andrew and comms, making sure that we're telling the right stories to the right people. Got some dogs downstairs. You know, takes a village to do this damn thing.
Village, yeah. So I saw you going through your mind the whole map of the head going.
That was awesome.
I probably missed like four different pieces of it, but it's hard not to be enormously grateful for those guys.
Yes, and we celebrate entrepreneurship on the show all the time, and this is a great example of how it takes a village to bring this to fruition over time.
You got the pilot plant downstairs. You got Dre and Hans in that team. I got in early this morning and I saw them busting their ass on a decanting centrifuge and a spray dryer. It goes on and on.
And for next time, we'll talk about what a decanting centrifuge.
I didn't know what that was a couple years ago either.
And that's what I'm saying. It's nuts that you autodidacted. You pulled this self-learning into your own life, and then you went and kept talking to brilliant people and building this out into the world. So go check out the products, the Just products out at the stores. Thank you everyone for tuning in. If you had a good time, give us a like, comment, subscribe. If you found this content useful, share it with other people. Let's get more people talking about clean food, the importance of this across the world, immersing ourselves in other people's shoes across the world, and the importance of what it would be like to be them. If it's just a roll of die, then maybe we should be focusing a lot of our time on helping uplift them and eradicate suffering.
No doubt.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you so much for your time.
That was fun.
It was such a pleasure.
Thank you too.
Much love. Thank you. Thanks everyone.